Who knows? Any final thoughts with that? No? All right. Next up, final segment of the night. This is something I prompted Jason with a couple days ago when I approached him about doing this. Paul, you have, I believe you know the deal for this. We're doing our 5 most influential baseball players of all time. I don't know if you've made your top 5. Jason and I made a top 6 sort of and included an honorable mention. If you don't have your own, do you have your own top 5 off the top of your head or at your hands?
I do have my top 5. I don't know if I have an honorable mention, but I have my top 5. I gave it a little bit of thought earlier. This was the segment I was most looking forward to.
Okay, awesome. So I'm glad we're all on the same page then. Would either of you two like to start, or would you guys like for me to start? How about I'll start. I want to start because I want to kind of frame how I thought about this and then open the floor to you two. So first and foremost, I feel like this isn't necessarily the 5 best baseball players of all time. It's the 5 most influential. So statistics and accomplishments, accolades, that will play a factor into how I rank these guys, but it's not going to be the end all be all deciding vote. I tried to take into account legend status or lore, like guys you hear stories about, guys that have these sort of tall tales that you attribute to their names, to their characters, to their personas that have lasted, that will continue to last. Generational impact. So guys that I hear my dad talk about, guys that I would hear older fans of the game talk about, or even some of these newer guys that have the name that still carries, that you know is going to carry, that you're going to tell your kids about, that sort of thing. So that being said, my list has more pretty much all past players, but my honorable mentions, I gave love to a couple more newer guys. And then I took into account fan base for that particular player, how much fan support or appreciation they have. And again, accomplishments, like accolade stats. So I started this one, I think is very obvious. And Jason and I we grouped 2 players together for this. Jackie Robinson and Roberto Clemente, I think have to be number 1. I feel like you can't really include one without including the other. It would be unfair to Clemente to not include him if you include Jackie. And I don't want to say one is more influential than the other because they both open the door for African-American players, Latin players. They're both Hall of Famers. Jackie, of course, it's Jackie freaking Robinson. Man, any baseball player that has a movie made about him, it's a pretty big deal. Not to mention the fact he was an all-purpose athlete at UCLA. So there's like that whole aspect to him as well. He played in the Negro Leagues.
Sports.
Yeah. And then Clemente, 3,000 hits. He's the Roberto Clemente Award is named after him, which by definition of Major League Baseball best represents what a Major League Baseball player should be both on and off the field. I think that really speaks to something. My number 2, Babe Ruth. Another easy one, I feel like. I really think that after you get past the top 3 or 4, if you want to include Clemente as well, that's when it actually gets difficult. Ruth, I mean, I was actually looking at some of his numbers the other day, like really trying to gain a grasp for how good he actually was, because there's been a lot of slander towards Ruth from certain big name baseball media people recently. Jason probably knows what I'm talking about. 714 career homers, 2,214 RBIs, and 183.1 career WAR. He led the league in homers 12 times, and he's the all-time leader in slugging percentage, OPS, and OPS plus. Not to mention he has 7 World Series titles.
With what team? Did he win any with the Red Sox?
No, he did win one. I thought he did win one with the Red Sox.
And then they Mookie'd him, right?
Yeah. Oh, so he Mookie'd Babe Ruth. Yeah, that's how that works. Chronological order.
Sox haven't won a World Series since Mookie, I'm just saying.
I feel like 20 years from now, Shohei Ohtani will probably be on this list and maybe even higher than Ruth. Because if you look at their stats from when they both pitched and hit, Shohei's 2-way stats are way more impressive. But Ruth, I mean, when people said when Shohei Ohtani was coming in, it was a big deal because he was supposedly going to be the next Babe Ruth. That's, he's the main guy in the Sandlot where there's this legend built around him. Everybody knows Babe Ruth. One of my roommates who doesn't know anything about baseball, I asked him, can you name any baseball players at all? He named Babe Ruth, and the other guy he named was actually Derek Jeter, which I thought was kind of funny. He's one of my honorable mentions. I'll get to him a little bit later. Babe Ruth, I feel like if he's not one, he has to be two in this. He just has to be. And then 3 for me was Hank Aaron. 755 homers. Next only to Barry Bonds, who is not included in this list for me. Hank Aaron, the all-time leader in RBIs, as well as total bases. He's a 21-time All-Star, and he did so in 21 consecutive seasons. 21 consecutive trips to the All-Star game. He only has 1 World Series title. He only has 1 MVP. He has 3 Gold Glove awards. But as far as lasting impact on the game, I've kind of picked my dad's brain about this. He was never really considered one of the best while he was playing per se. But after you get to a number like 755, there's so much work that goes into it and so much consistency that you have to have. And the clip of him hitting the homer and the field being stormed by like fans and stuff, that's a clip that will never die in baseball. And it's something that sticks out more in my brain than Bonds hitting his record-breaking homer against, I think it was the Nationals, and hugging his kid at the plate. I actually saw that game live, not in San Francisco, but I remember watching it at the time. But I feel like Aaron gets the nod, partly from longevity, partly less controversy. And he's got the Hank Aaron Award named after him too. I feel like that has to stand. If you have an award named after you in the game of baseball, that's got to stick for something. 4 and 5 was a lot harder for me. I kind of thought about this next tier of players, and I had a whole bunch of names that came with it. Stan Musial, Willie Mays, Ted Williams, Alex Rodriguez, Satchel Paige, Ricky Henderson, Barry Bonds, Mike Trout, Pedro Martinez, Ken Griffey Jr. However, I went this direction. My number 4, I have to give him some respect. It's Lou Gehrig for me. Maybe surprising, Jason, having 2 Yankees here in my list. 2,130 consecutive games played, was the longest stretch until Cal Ripken broke it in 1995. His career was cut short at age 36 due to Lou Gehrig's disease. He probably would have played another 3 to 4 years and added to his pretty impressive totals. 2-time MVP, 7-time All-Star selection, 1 Triple Crown, 6 World Series rings. He's probably the greatest first baseman of all time, if not one of them. He's a player from well before I was born, but he gets looped into the Yankees lore and probably doesn't get enough credit for how good of a player he actually was because of how good Ruth was. But I don't think you can really tell the story of the game of baseball or the story of baseball's most successful team without including him in this list as well. And then for my 5th, I really wanted to make sure I included a pitcher. I was close to doing Rivera, but I didn't feel like he had the same gravitas and I don't feel like he had the same kind of ability to stack up with this guy that I'm about to mention. I talked about Satchel Paige earlier. He was close to making this list for me. Pedro. I thought about Sandy Koufax. I thought about Clayton Kershaw. I thought about a couple of other guys, but I landed on Nolan Ryan for my number 5.
Oh God, are you kidding? You just named my whole list.
Your whole list? We have the same list.
It's all gone. I mean, there's one guy I have in my top 5 that you didn't credit in your top 5, but you mentioned his name. It's unbelievable. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's great. I felt like I had to include a pitcher. And when I was thinking of guys, like if you're thinking about who's the number 1 guy I wouldn't want to face all time as a hitter, outside of I wouldn't want to face anybody that throws 100 and up, and everybody supposedly says that Nolan Ryan is still one of the hardest throwers of all time. He had a 27-year career in baseball, which is absurd. His career in baseball is older than I am. Also absurd.
His last pitch ever was 98 when he was 46 years old.
Yes. 807 career appearances, 324 wins, 5,714 strikeouts, and 5,386 innings pitched. He's an 8-time All-Star, World Series winner once. He owns the Rangers. It's Nolan freaking Ryan. Is there another pitcher that you can say is most influential? I feel like this whole wave of fireballers that we've had the last 10 years, Nolan Ryan's name always gets brought up in every single conversation, every live televised game about all these hard throwing guys. Every single time his name gets brought up, and it's because of the influence that he has and has had on the sport. My honorable mentions were Ken Griffey Jr., Ted Williams, and Derek Jeter. Griffey, I really thought about because, again, he sort of, I think, changed. I wasn't really around at the time, but I feel like he kind of changed the game in the way that he started the modernization of it coming into this new century. The backwards hat thing during the home run derby, that's always going to be a tripe. You could even I feel like you could maybe make that the new logo of the majors if you wanted, if you're not going to use Trout's stance. Ted Williams, if not for 2 stints serving as a pilot for the United States government in wars, he probably would have career numbers close to Ruth and Gehrig. They're already pretty damn incredible. A lot of people say he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest hitter of all time. Last hitter to hit over 400 in a season. All kinds of stuff attributed to his name in terms of lore and legend in the Red Sox organization. No World Series rings, though, unfortunately. And then Derek Jeter, I grouped in partly because with my non-baseball fan roommate bringing his name up, it really made me think about guys in the last 25, 30 years that have pull and have those have the name recognition. And it's really Jeter, A-Rod, maybe Ortiz, and then I guess Trout, but that's coming from someone who is a fan of baseball. I don't know what non-baseball fans say. And Jeter, even I'm a Red Sox fan, I've got all kinds of respect for him. The Jeter throw is a whole thing that every kid ever practices when they're taking ground balls in the infield. He won how many World Series rings, Jason? 5. Thank you. He's a captain of the most storied organization in history in our lifetime. I feel like not giving him at least a sniff of this list would be somewhat disingenuous, even though he may not be as impressive a player as the rest of these guys on this list. You got to give me credit for a Red Sox fan naming 3 Yankees in here. This was hard for me. This was hard and it tore me to pieces.
Our lists are wildly different.
Our lists are different, whereas apparently Paul's and I are exactly the same. Apparently.
Well, I approached this. Do you want me to just go with my list now?
Well, do you have any takes about it? Do you think any of my guys don't belong?
No, I like all of your lists. I think the only difference with our list, you kind of did best players, and I kind of did changing the game.
Okay.
I think that's
I'm interested.
The 2 biggest differences. So
I'm interested.
That being said, I guess I'll go right into it. And yeah. I definitely think I kind of overthought this a lot.
Wait, before you do, Paul, since our lists were so similar, if you want to give me a hit list or a bullet point on the names I mentioned, go for it.
Yeah. I mean, our listeners, I guess, are probably going to think I didn't prepare for this because I'm just piggybacking off of the names that you did. I do. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good transition because your guys are pretty much my guys. The only guy I officially had on my list that you said you didn't, even though you mentioned his name, is I did have Barry Bonds on my list. And the reason for that is because he is the all-time leader in home runs in Major League Baseball. But also, from an outsider perspective, we might not always link baseball with this word, but I know people who don't watch the game as much as us do. Steroids and baseball for people go together a lot. And influential is not, in this case, I think we're generally going to be saying guys that had a good influence on the game. And you can get into the whole Barry Bonds, should he be a Hall of Famer or not? Everybody was using steroids, but you think Barry Bonds, and like one of the first things you think is steroids, and that kind of era, baseball, the steroid era, and the home runs just going up in an exponential amount. I thought you had to put him on there. Whether you like or dislike the guy, he does have 762 home runs, and baseball is not taking away that record, and I'm not even advocating that they should. So I did officially have him on my list, mainly for that reason. Roberto Clemente is another guy I have to put on my list. I mean, as a Pirate fan, he greatest Pirate of all time, in my opinion, one of the greatest baseball players of all time.
Even better than Barry Bonds?
I put Clemente above Bonds, but that's like part of that's like a more of a love for Clemente.
Yeah.
And because of the kind of guy he was off the field. And I have to mention that the way he died, for people who don't know, you guys might know, he died on New Year's Eve, sending relief to victims of violent earthquakes in Nicaragua. And he was sending relief like continuously throughout the year, and that the supplies and everything that he was sending wasn't making it to the people that needed it most. Like Nicaragua had a very corrupt government. I think they might still. I know that they have throughout history. And it was just going to more of the wealthy and more powerful people, and not everybody was getting the relief they needed. So he, on this trip, went down himself with everything that he was sending to make sure it got in the hands of the people who needed it most. And that night, that New Year's Eve night, that plane went down and crashed. And so that's how he passed away. And a fun fact, maybe not fun, but an interesting tidbit is a gentleman named Tom Walker was going to join him on that trip. And Roberto said, no, go enjoy yourself, go spend time with your family and friends on New Year's Eve. Tom Walker is the father of Neil Walker, who was second baseman for the Pirates, and was part of the Pirates.
Yankee legend.
Brought us out of 20 straight losing years. So
wow.
That's just interesting how that all kind of went in a circle. And then
I didn't know that.
What'd you say?
I didn't know that. That was a good fun fact right there.
Yeah. And Roberto Clemente Day is the thing too. And in case anybody didn't know, August 18th is Roberto Clemente's birthday. And as a Pirate fan, I really want the city of Pittsburgh and everybody in general to make a push for everybody to wear the number 21 on that day, as we wear 42 on Jackie Robinson Day. So
I was about to say, I think it's only a matter of time before that happens.
I think Roberto Clemente. Yeah, he's a special player, special person for anybody who roots for black and gold. And then the other guys, I mean, you hit on Jackie Robinson is Jackie Robinson. I would love to talk more about him, but I don't want to steal too much of the spotlight. Nolan Ryan is a guy I didn't think that you would have on the list, Amar, but I did. And the reason that I had him on the list is I tried to look at where are we in the game now and who in the past kind of played that way. And the game is very black and white now, in my opinion. It's strikeouts, it's home runs. Nolan Ryan, huge strikeout guy, as you mentioned, wasn't always the most efficient pitcher, but he had a rubber arm. And guys, pitchers are not going as deep into ball games now. The pitch count is preventing guys from going as deep into ball games. And the style of pitching is to try to strike the guy out and not necessarily pitch to contact and try to get through a game efficiently. And I think that that's how Nolan Ryan pitched. I know it sounds like I'm kind of saying that in a negative way, but he was a master at it. And I think that just pitchers are pitching that way now. And maybe that's partly to avoid the home run. But I thought he deserved a spot on that list just because that's just how the game's being played and pitched right now. But you hit the nail on the head. If I did have an honorable mention, it probably would have been Satchel Paige too. So, I mean, you guys can take the floor. Thanks for going first, Amar.
Yeah, we agree on everything with Nolan. That's why I included him in my list. I did not include Bonds because I wasn't really taking into account negative versus positive press. I was thinking more like, I feel like he's not I feel like we don't talk about his game anymore. We talk about all the other stuff. It's not because I actually remember watching him. I remember how good he was. And you look at the numbers. Yeah. He had multiple seasons where he was getting on base more than half the time. That never happens. Not like post 1930. That's not supposed to happen.
600 on base percentage when he was like 37.
Yeah, that's not supposed to happen. And you can take all the steroids you want. Doesn't mean you're going to be able to learn how to hit a baseball. You still actually have to do the work on that end. And there's been plenty of guys who've done roids and played in the majors that have sucked. So you got to give him his credit. To be honest, I didn't include him on the list only because I was trying to make it about more than just the sport of baseball. So I like Robinson, Clemente, that's obvious. Ruth, that's baseball in a nutshell in Babe Ruth. Hank Aaron, that's another one where it kind of pales beyond the white lines of the baseball field. Lou Gehrig, you could argue the same thing. And you could also argue his commitment to playing every single day speaks to just putting in the work every single day. And then Nolan Ryan, it's like a Hall of Famer with a career that almost spanned 3 decades. Like not including Bonds on my list was really tough. I think the only reason why I didn't was because maybe internally, like subconsciously, I have a negative connotation with him, but I think he should be in the Hall. I don't. The story is the job of the Hall of Fame is to tell the story of baseball, whether it's good or bad. I don't really agree with him not being in there. We could get into that argument if we want. I don't think we need to. Maybe for another day.
Next podcast.
Next one. But Jason, I'm going to give it to you. I want to hear what your top 5 is because it sounds like you went a completely different direction with this.
Yeah, I did. And I do take a lot of pride in baseball history and kind of where I rank certain players. So
biggest baseball nerd I know right here.
So don't get on me with that because I did take a very different route. I kind of went the route of like how they kind of changed the game or differentiated from other players, like almost like Curry or like Jokic or whatever in basketball, like how they're just completely different players and like changed generations in terms of their play style. So I certainly overthought it a little bit and didn't really go the top 5 best players, which not that you guys did, but some of the players you guys named definitely top 5, maybe top 10 talent ever. But I'll go right at it. I am going to change one because I did overthink it a lot. And I tried to go no Yankees because I really just tried to go basically zero bias. But I'm going Robinson, Clemente up top. I wasn't going to include Clemente with Robinson, but you guys definitely, I was going to put Clemente a little bit lower just because Robinson kind of arrived on the scene first.
Yeah, like if we want to do that argument, Robinson I think is more influential. Like if you have to stack them up, but I didn't want to like play the semantics game with it. I just put them together.
Yeah, and I mean, everybody's seen the movie. Everybody's heard everything. I mean, there's for 25 years, there's been a retired number throughout the entire sport, which across all 4 major sports in the U.S., that's not a thing in any other sport. And I still think it was 30, 40 years too late that they did that. I mean, Rivera was wearing 42 until not even 10 full years ago.
Right.
So, and again, that was to honor him, not to disrespect him or anything. But those are my top 2. I will go Babe Ruth 3. He was the one that wasn't even on my list because I didn't want to name any Yankees. But I mean, don't even talk about his pitching stats right now because he is known to be a home run hitter. He had many seasons where he was hitting more home runs than multiple franchises year in and year out. I mean, he was hitting home runs the way Larry Bird and Steph Curry were shooting threes before they were shooting threes, or to a different extent of them shooting threes. So, I mean, him hitting home runs kind of set the bar for kind of how baseball is played. If you had 8 home runs, that used to be considered a lot in a year. And then he kind of arrived on the scene. And I understand he was facing maybe 84 down the middle or whatever, but he was the only one doing that at the time. So that's kind of my argument there. Again, he kind of changed the face of 2 franchises, not even trying to be a Yankee homer right now, but
no, you're right though. You're right.
He probably arguably the 2 most famous franchises in arguably the most famous American sport.
He probably changed the whole landscape of baseball, not just those 2 franchises.
Yep. And I mean, again, we can always go over the backstory in that trade another day, but I think Babe Ruth, Robinson, Clemente, those are 3 kind of easy ones that you don't really need an explanation for. I am going to name the 4 I still have written down because I didn't have Ruth originally, but I have Griffey as my next one. Griffey, again, kind of just his play style. He missed basically 4 years of his prime, 630 home runs. I mean, if he stayed healthy, he was a Gold Glove center fielder. He was so fast. He was so big. He probably could have hit 800 home runs if he stayed healthy. I mean, just played the game with so much passion. He had so much fun. And again, that was kind of new to the scene as well. Nobody really ever seen that before. So I would definitely say he brought some pretty bad franchises up as well. Mariners, Reds. I mean,
it was hard not for me to include him in mine. Like,
was unbelievable.
I was really close. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. The one following him is kind of, in my opinion, Griffey before Griffey, and this might surprise you, but Ricky Henderson. I'm really excited to read his book. He just came out with a book. So the active MLB steals leader. Does anybody have any idea who that is?
The active steals leader? Wait, this is a fun game. Paul, you guess first. I'll guess second.
The player has to be active now.
Yes.
Yeah. Crap. I don't know. I mean,
if you get one or two, I'd be impressed.
Are either
you go first?
Are either players currently free agents who are not retired?
I honestly don't know what team he is on, but
the guy I was thinking of was Juan Pierre, but I don't. He's not
been retired for a bit.
Right?
Jacoby Ellsbury popped into my head for a second just because I know he had a bunch of great stolen base seasons, but he hasn't been playing for a few years. I think he's retired. I would say maybe like this is actually kind of hard. Maybe maybe Gardner's in there.
He's not active.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe I don't know. What the hell? Who even keeps track of who's the stolen base leader anymore at the end of the year?
This is probably a very dumb guess, but and he might not be he might not be the leader, but for a time the most feared guy on the base paths was Billy Hamilton.
Yeah, he's actually third on that list.
Third.
Right, so it's not that dumb.
Okay. So the reason I bring that up, going back to it.
Well, who are 1 and 2? You never. Who is it?
Well, I'm going at that right now. So D. Strange Gordon. Sorry. He is the leader.
Yeah.
With, I think, 336 stolen bases in his career.
Oh, okay. I already know where you're about to go with this.
Elvis Andrus, however the fuck you say his name. He is number 2. There's 4 total guys right now with 300 or more stolen bases. Billy Hamilton, and that's all he does. Starling Marte and those other 2 guys.
Marte was going to be one of my guesses. He would have been my guess.
Again, 336 stolen bases is what the active leader has, right?
Doesn't Henderson have like 1,000 more than that?
Ricky Henderson has 1,406 stolen bases.
Wow.
By the time of his age 24 season, he would be the active leader today by 100 stolen bases. He would have 427 stolen bases from when he was 20 to 24 years old. So that's kind of where I went there. I mean, I'm really excited to read his book. He is a crazy personality. He was an unbelievable athlete that kind of baseball has never seen really before. Not only was he a base stealer, he had 300 career home runs. I still think, holds the record for most leadoff home runs. I mean, he's a World Series champ. 2-time World Series champ. He's won an MVP. He's a Hall of Famer by a landslide. 3,000 hits. I think, again, he was kind of Griffey before Griffey, which a lot of people don't realize in terms of personality and flair and kind of athletic ability. So that's where I went for my third or fourth one, I guess.
One more stat with Ricky before you move off. 1,406 career stolen bases, first all time. And then you have Lou Brock next with 938, almost a full 500 stolen bases behind him. Ricky Henderson also played until he was 44 years old. He played with a bunch of different teams too. He give me a sec. He played with I want to say it was he started with Oakland, then he went to the Yankees, back to Oakland again, San Diego, Anaheim, the Mets, Seattle, the Red Sox, the Dodgers. He finished his career in 2003. I didn't realize that until I saw a clip on Twitter the other day of him hitting a homer with the Dodgers in his last season. All-time leader in runs scored, 2,295 runs scored. Also, all-time leader in times caught stealing. But great pick, Jason. I was really close to putting him in my list, and I kind of thought about if I was going to put, I really thought about including him over Griffey for that honorable mention spot, but I ended up giving Griffey the edge just because I felt like he had more of an all-around kind of influence in game.
Yep. Yeah, I think it was kind of just, again, with my thinking of how people change the game, I think that was kind of just hard to keep him off my list.
Yeah. Who are your last two?
So my next one's my only pitcher on my list, and I could have went so many different ways pitching. I could have went Pedro, Satchel, Randy Johnson won 4 straight Cy Youngs. He signed a 4-year contract and literally won a Cy Young every single year. I mean, I even think Kershaw's going to be an all-time great when it's all said and done, Koufax, but my fourth one is Greg Maddux, actually.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Again, that could surprise some people.
Okay.
Maddux,
I like that one a lot, and I kept him off for a specific reason, but I'd love to hear your argument.
Yep. Greg
I like
Maddux,
that pick.
4-time Cy Young, okay?
Yeah.
A 4-time ERA title,
Okay.
which is also insane. 5,000 plus innings pitched. And he has 18, I repeat, 18 gold gloves. The dude is like maybe my size, 5'10", 5'11", 170 pounds soaking wet. He is literally a wizard, like his nickname states. And he was pitching in a roided era when there was guys such as Pedro and Randy and Roger Clemens who had 7 Cy Youngs who were all throwing in the high 90s. This dude was the complete opposite. And this dude kind of paved the way for guys like Dallas Keuchel and even today Nestor Cortez and all these guys that are throwing 91, 90 or whatever. And I mean, the true baseball fan knows what a Maddux is. I mean, he was mowing guys down with 88, 89, 90.
He started the like sinker changeup wave, I feel like the real wave of it.
Yep. So he's won a World Series. He could have easily won more. But again, 355 games won. I mean, we're never really going to even see maybe another 300 game winner with the way the game's going. In my opinion, he won 4 straight Cy Youngs again from 92 to 95. Again, in the middle of just everybody juicing. So everybody was power against power, Clemens against Bonds and all these guys, and he was just a complete opposite. So in terms of influential talent, I think he's right there. And then another, probably my honorable mention pitcher is Bob Gibson.
Great one.
Good pick.
I don't know if a lot of people know much about Bob Gibson, but he literally changed the physical field of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, the mound had to be changed because he pitched a 1.12 ERA in 1968.
Did they move it back a full foot or was it just 6 inches? I don't remember.
It was at least 6 inches, possibly a foot, but
I think they lowered the mound too after that.
Yep, they definitely lowered it. He was just so feared and was just one of the scariest motherfuckers that the mound has ever seen, literally. I also read a stat that in that 1968 year, he not once got pulled out of the game in the middle of an inning. Not one single time got pulled out of the game. We will never see that again.
Wow.
And then I think he got pinch hit for 6 total times, including playoffs. So I believe they won the World Series that year, or at least were in it. And his success did not slow down in the World Series at all. So that would be my honorable mention. But my 5th one, which again could surprise some people as well, would be Tony Gwynn.
Tony Gwynn.
Tony Gwynn is on my list. I'm similar to you and Paul in terms of I'm bored and I'm searching Baseball Reference just for the hell of it. But Tony Gwynn is one of the greatest Baseball Reference pages to look at, in my opinion. You're not going to see the home runs with him. You are going to see the 543 doubles, the 150 triples, or whatever he hit. He has 3-time batting champion, which, again, 8 times in the Royd era when a lot of people are hitting 340, 350 is pretty unbelievable. And this is my favorite stat of all. Tony Gwynn, again, looking at the game today, is completely different. He struck out more than 40 times, one time in his entire career. One time. Joey Gallo does that in a game.
And it was 40 on the nose, for that matter.
I think he struck out 43 one year, if I'm not wrong. But
40 strikeouts in 1988.
So, I mean, from changing the game and being influential with his on the field, again, he passed pretty early from unfortunate reasons. But again, some of these numbers, I mean, he was 34 and he hit 394. And he came in 7th in the MVP that year after hitting 394. So some of these stats are kind of just stupid in my opinion, but that's the route I went. Again, very kind of different from your list. But I did enjoy hearing your list as well. But wow. I could definitely go on and on about some statistics.
Well, I'm looking at his reference page right now. He had 6, 7. He had 8 seasons in which he hit 350 or higher. 1, 2, 3, 4 of those he hit 350 or higher. No, I just said that. 4 of those he hit 360 or higher. He had a 370 season in 1987. 394 in 1994. That was the year you mentioned when he was 34. And then when he was 37, he hit 372.
I mean, his last year, he was 41. He hit 324, and that was his decline. So
yeah, he only played 70 games that year.
And again, he was definitely not the most in shape guy. And he still, in certain years, stole 56 bags, 40 bags. So again, I mean, the strikeout numbers are just absolutely stupid. I mean, for him to strike out less than 20 times in a full season.
Now,
I mean, Aaron Judge and Stanton, those are 2 of the most feared hitters in today's game, and those guys have 200 strikeouts consistently.
Yeah, those guys probably do that in a month, 20 Ks.
Yep.
Wow, great lists, all 3 of us.
Look, I love that, Jason. You certainly did take a different avenue than DeMar and I. I kind of wanted to touch on Greg Maddux. One more time real quick.
Please do.
Because I really did consider putting him on the list. But what was kind of interesting, and, we can have a debate probably off to the side at some other time. It's interesting. The reasons that you had him on the list were the reasons I didn't have him on the list. Because obviously a phenomenally accomplished pitcher. And he did pave the way for some of these some of the softer throwers that we have in today's game. I'm surprised you didn't throw out Kyle Hendricks, who also pitched on the Cubs as Maddux did. But that's the first guy that comes to mind that I've seen that resembles Maddux.
Greinke, I think, is the biggest one for me.
Even Wainwright today, but yep.
Yeah. But the reason that I didn't have him on the list was kind of because, I guess I did take a different approach, and I had Nolan Ryan on there because of all the strikeouts and the harder throwing. We see some of the softer throwing today, but a lot of the focus is on the mid to upper 90s. I mean, you just take a guy on the Yankees that, Garrett Cole, throws mid to upper 90s. And I feel like that's the way for pitchers. And I thought that Maddux was more of an outlier with his success. And the way that he succeeded at the game wasn't the way that we see some of these pitchers now. But you made a great point about some of the softer throwers in today's game that are able to have success and just, dot the corners and everything like that. It's a masterful way to pitch. I mean, pitching's an art, and Maddux was as good of an artist as there was. So I just thought it was interesting. We kind of looked at the same information and made different conclusions from it.
Yep. And those are great points. It was just very tough between him and Bob Gibson. I mean, I've read a lot about Bob Gibson as well. And again, I can't think of a guy who, maybe Steph Curry in basketball, because if there is ever a 4-point line in basketball, it would solely be because be because of him.
Yeah.
Again, the whole reason why the mound got changed was because of one guy. It's not like everybody had a 1.1 ERA. So those two guys, definitely insane. The one fun fact I have that's pretty insane about Nolan Ryan is I was thinking about putting him on my list. He's never won a Cy Young, which is just unbelievable. So I think that was kind of crazy to look at because he did pitch for close to 30 years and had close to 6,000 strikeouts, but never won a Cy Young. So that's a pretty interesting fact.
So we've talked a few times about the mound being moved because of Bob Gibson's career. For those of you who maybe aren't as familiar with that, Bob Gibson had this incredible season in, I believe it was 1968. He had the lowest ERA for a season in modern Major League history. So dominant, and pitchers that year across the board were so dominant that they lowered the height of the mound a full 5 inches, which gives you less loft or less like push off essentially coming down. And then trying to see if they actually moved it back as well. I believe they did, but they definitely shrank the strike zone. I don't know if they actually moved it back too, but yeah, they brought it down a full like half foot, and then they changed the strike zone rules as well. So like, yeah, if you're literally changing the rules of sport based off the dominance of one player, I don't know how you can't say he's non-influential to the sport. Wow, that's pretty insane.
A few little other fun facts from that season. He was 22-9 with a 1.1. He had 9 losses with a 1 ERA that year, which is pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
He also had 28 complete games out of 35 starts, which I don't think a complete game counts if you only throw 8 innings. So in some of those losses, again, like I said, I don't think he ever got taken out of a game. He had over 300 innings pitched, which again, in today's game, 200 innings pitched is a ton. So, I mean, the guy was just, and then you look at his trophy case from that year, dude was an all-star, Cy Young, MVP, and Gold Glover. If I were to guess, probably won the Silver Slugger too.
And that was the year after they won the World Series too.
Yep. So, I mean, it was just,
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he's won 2 World Series.
Wow.
So really just a kind of a special guy that I think because of the era he pitched in, kind of before our generation, it doesn't get talked about enough, but just an ace. to put it lightly.
To bring this question into modern terms now, is there a guy besides Trout or Ohtani that could make their way onto this list? Like, does maybe, and if so, who are those guys? What's a short list? Maybe you put Kershaw, maybe. I think Verlander might have a little. Well, no, probably Kershaw more than him.
I think Kershaw's overall numbers kind of make Verlander's arguably look silly, which is kind of funny to say because
you're right though. I've looked at both pages. You're right. He's
but
better.
Yeah, I think from a pitching standpoint, it's probably Kershaw. I mean, from a hitting standpoint, you can go a few different ways. You can go Acuna, Soto.
Yeah, Tatis maybe.
Yeah, I mean, again, the way I was thinking, you could even throw Stanton and Judge on there just from their size standpoints and how hard they hit a ball. And even a guy like O'Neal Cruz, who is just coming on the scene. I mean,
yes, sir.
6'7", 225-pound shortstop that runs as fast as close to Billy Hamilton and hits the ball as hard as Giancarlo Stanton and throws the ball as hard as Max Scherzer. I mean, he's a guy that could actually change the game too. So
Stanton, I think, is one that maybe could end up on this list. He's 32 right now.
He could hit 600 home runs if he doesn't get hurt.
He's at 366 right now, and that's taking into account 2019, where he was hurt most of the year. He only hit 3. In 2020, he was hit most of the year. He only hit 4.
Yeah, He's playing at Yankee Stadium. I mean, he could hit 30 for the next 5 or 6 years.
He could hit 40 for the next 5 or 6 years, for that matter. He's got 19 already this year in 62 games. I think maybe you could make an argument for, like, I'm just trying to think of impact.
I got one tomorrow. If you're in a little bit of a mental lapse, somebody that I don't think has been said yet, unless I did miss it. And it's not like in a purely stats or like actually playing the game perspective. I think Pete Alonso has a really good opportunity to like shape the home run derby. The home run derby has like already been changing over the past few years, but he's a back-to-back champ. I imagine he'd be the favorite again. He's very into it. And fastest got to get to 100 home runs as well. So I think that's a guy in terms that like people can at least remember down the road. Like I could see him rattling off, 4 or 5 home run derbies in a row.
Yeah.
And he's still very young as well. He's him and Judge I believe are on pace. If you extrapolate their home runs per at bat, they're on pace to break Bonds' record. So they could be duking it out throughout the course of their career. But Pete has put on an absolute show the past couple home run derbies. Really excited to see him again this year. So taking a little bit of a different route with that one.
I feel like you could maybe make an argument for Miguel Cabrera in a couple of years. People have the recency of him like getting older and not being quite what he used to be and having the contract that he has right now. And I feel like his name isn't really floated around in that great status as it used to be, even though he is. Pujols, you could say maybe too.
Yeah, I was gonna say we got to give some love to Pujols. Yeah. He probably had arguably the greatest 10-year stretch of any right-handed hitter in the history.
And he's probably like 5 years older than it says on his Baseball Reference page. You know how those Dominican birth certificates work.
Juan Soto was not 19 when he broke into the league. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, there's no way. He had to be like 22, 23 at least. Which if he's like 26, 27 now, and he actually gets that 13-year deal or whatever that the Nats reportedly offered him today, we'll see how that goes.
Who also I think you could throw in there, and I'm not a fan of him at all, and I think he'll be looked at differently for the rest of history, is the guy you have on your shirt right there. I mean,
Altuve?
In terms of influential, I think that's why the game is so great and why we're so into it, is because there's guys who are 6'11" like Randy Johnson, or 6'7", 285 pounds like Judge. Yeah. And then this guy he's listed at, I think, 5'6". I don't think he's even 5'6".
He's tiny.
He's like 5'4", 5'5", and what he can do with a baseball bat, cheating or not, again, I'm not a fan of his, but the fact that he can hit a ball onto the train tracks in Minute Maid, again, at 5'5", and hit a ball 440 feet is absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, in terms of changing the game, he makes a lot of kids who are way undersized, who are smaller than all of us, like actually realize that they maybe have a shot at this, which is kind of pretty crazy. And I mean, you could even throw, I don't think his stats are up there, but like a guy like Stroman, who's 5'8", 5'9", and throws 97 or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of guys in terms of just their size that you could throw in there.
The last point I want to hit on really before we go, we've been here for a while now, longer than we anticipated at the beginning, but it's been great conversation. It's been really fun.
Been a lot of fun.
I appreciate having you guys coming on and joining me on this. It's kind of a new venture for me. I don't know how frequently I'll be doing these. It's probably not going to be just on baseball, but baseball is the main sport that's in season right now. I wanted to make sure I talked about it, especially with guys who have a lot to say about the game and have a lot to care about the game with as well. I am going to challenge both of you to tune into more West Coast baseball, and I'm going to challenge anybody who listens to this as well. If you're a college student, or if you're a member of T-Mobile, I believe you can get MLB TV for free. Pretty much everybody's on T-Mobile if you're not on AT&T, and a lot of people that are listening to this are probably in college or close to it. Because of my work schedule, I'll get home most of the time around like 10, 11 or something. And the only games that are really on are the East Coast games that are finishing up, or the West Coast games are just starting. And for some reason, the Angels are always like the last team to have their first pitch. So I always end up watching Angels games, and it's Shohei and it's Trout. And thank God they're actually starting to win some games. It's not like mind-numbingly boring to watch. Like we were kind of joking about earlier, those two like having 3 or 4 combined homers in a game and still losing. They've been starting to put some good games together. Rendon will be back soon. I have loved every second of watching them play. I went out to the West Coast to see some baseball games, not just to see Shohei play, but that was a big reason that drew me out there. I've never watched baseball played the way that those two have done it, where you have Trout having the kind of impact he has, not just at the plate, but also in the field, being an incredible center fielder. He's probably the modern era version of a Mickey Mantle, I would say, would be a good comp.
Willie Mays, yep.
Willie Mays would be probably a better comp because Mickey was a switch hitter. Trout isn't.
Which, like, some old heads might get nauseous at us saying that, but if you look at stats, it's kind of true.
It is. I think Trout, I don't know like where the Angels go. I don't know how they build a competitive team out of these guys. Shohei is a free agent after next year. He might not even be an Angel a year and a half from now. And he probably won't be if they keep this up. But
they should trade him.
30 years from now, we're going to look back at this 3-year period where the Angels had these two guys who are not just generational talents, but multi-generational talents, like guys that you will not see have the impact that they're having for the names that we mentioned, that Paul and I brought up, that Jason brought up. These are guys Babe Ruth played 100 years ago now. And Shohei's doing this. He's outpacing Ruth on like with what they were both doing. He's doing a better job of it. Look at the numbers. It's true. You got to tune in. If you haven't already, you have to, because something incredible is happening from one of these two guys pretty much every single game. Pretty much. It's for a baseball nerd. It's like Cinemax after dark. It's insane.